Range anxiety is real in a few remote places like Big Bend. We got in the car about 5:45 this morning. I gotta admit, I had a little bit of a sleepless night because I wasn't sure how much energy the car would have overnight, how much it would lose just sitting there, and especially how cold, depending on how cold it got, wasn't sure what the losses would be. Hey there, welcome back. In this episode, we're going to do a quick trip to Big Bend National Park, and along the way, I'm going to get my COVID vaccination, so stick around. Chance and I just scored reservations to Big Bend National Park. Like most of the national parks, everything is very full, and Big Bend especially gets super hot in the summertime, and I didn't want to go when it was super hot with him, and there's a lot of pet restrictions at the national park. So we were looking at it, and everything was starting to get in the hot season, and then a couple days, Sunday to Monday, opened up for next week. So we're going to go next week. I'm super excited to go back. Last time I was there, it was actually right before my solar and storage system was getting installed. They started installing it actually as I was driving back. It's just before 4 o'clock on Saturday, and Chance and I are headed out to Big Bend. I'm all excited about getting my first dose of the COVID vaccine. And along the way, we're going to stop at the Junction Texas Supercharger, which is about, we should get there around 6:30 and 6:32 to be specific. And then we'll go on to Fort Stockton. We should get there at 9:41 p.m. So we're going to probably stop at Fort Stockton, maybe sleep at a rest area, camp back here in the car. I'll climb back there and sleep. Chance and I will sleep back there together. And then we'll drive into the park in the morning. So it's super windy out here. We're in Junction, Texas. We are supercharging. It estimates about 40 minutes until we're back on our way. So I'm taking Chance for a walk, feeding his dinner, and then we'll be on our way to Fort Stockton. Well, I was hoping that this time around I'd be able to make it all the way to Fort Stockton without having to stop again, but it just got too close. Even by driving a little bit slower, it was getting down to 3%. I really think it was the wind. We just came through a storm. The wind was really, really strong, and I think that was just slowing down. In fact, it got down to 2% estimated arrival, so within just a few miles of range, and that was just cutting it too close. So and the rain's starting to rain again. So we're going to charge here. It's estimated only to need to take about 10 minutes to charge. I just need to get a little bit of extra distance here at Ozona, and then we'll get to Fort Stockton. So we should be good to go. Well, we're here in Fort Stockton, and we cut it about as close as we possibly could. We only had 1% charge, 4 miles of charge when we arrived, and That's got to be as close as I've ever cut it. So thank goodness that we stopped in Ozona. I think what's going on is that there's just a lot of wind tonight, and I noticed that the charge was dropping faster when the wind was really heavy. And I noticed that on a trip coming back to Austin from Colorado, the same thing. When there was a really strong headwind, it really affected range. I can't prove it, but it seems to be a pattern there. But you know, and thank goodness we stopped at Ozona and we had it. I wasn't worried about it cutting so close because it was staying consistent, and I felt like I was in control of it, and I knew what I was doing. All the stuff on all the gauges and everything, and the stats helped me understand what was going on. So anyway, we're going to charge for about a half an hour, maybe a little bit more for good measure. Then we're going to go find a place to spend the night. I suspect we'll go to a rest area and find a place there. I know there's a rest area just a few miles down the interstate. Well, we finished supercharging last night around 11 o'clock, and we were looking for a place to sleep. We ended up in this spot out here, slept in the car, just as usual, camped in the back of the car. I'm about to give Chance a little quick walk, and then we're going to go to the Supercharger, top it off, and head down to Big Bend. So, as you can tell, it got pretty cold. We had camp mode off at first, and then turned it on because it got cold. Even Chance with all his fur was getting cold. And the sun is coming up as we speak. Look at that. I'm walking Chance right now while the car is supercharging at Fort Stockton again. We had about 250 miles, as I recall, of charge, and it'll go up to 325. So I'm going to top it off. My charging spot in Big Bend is, I think, 29 miles and 45 minutes from the campsite, and it's a slow charging, slowish 240 volt charger. So I want to be as full as possible with the fast charging, and then reduce how long I have to charge down there. So my plan is, when I do need to charge, park the car for an hour or two, go for a long hike with him somewhere near the charger, and then go do other things. But for now, this is easy. We can get some coffee, and I can get some coffee and stuff like that, and get the charger fully topped off, and then off we go to Big Bend. Good time, Chance? Here we go. We got in the car about 5:45 this morning. I gotta admit, I had a little bit of a sleepless night because I wasn't sure how much energy the car would have overnight, how much it would lose just sitting there, and especially how cold, depending on how cold it got, wasn't sure what the losses would be. It's not something I've measured, and I didn't know what the temperature was going to be or any of that. I had 14%, I think it was, as an estimate from the Panther Junction entrance to the park. And so the campsite was 10 miles on a gravel road, 9 miles, and then 9 miles back. What I decided to do was get up early, get up at 5:30, and drive slow, and hopefully I can make it. At first it wasn't looking so good in the first few miles because they were uphill. Now the last little section I've been downhill. I'm leaving the park now. I'm still in the park. I've got 138 miles, and it's 119 miles to the Supercharger. So it's looking good. It's gone from arriving with 2% to arriving with 3%. It's looking good, but I also have a time window I have to hit. So if I drive 30 miles an hour like I'm doing all the way, it's going to take me all day. This range anxiety is real in a few remote places like Big Bend. And if we just had a supercharger or something like it in the center of the park instead of, right now on the very edge of the park, 20 miles from the center ranger station, Panther Junction, it's that's the only electric charger, and that's 20 miles an hour charging. So it'd be great if we had superchargers in these remote national parks, but that's for another time. I hope I get there. This is not a good sign. Well, I really did it this time. We're in Marathon, Texas. It's the one city between Big Bend and the Supercharger in Fort Stockton. And even though we drove for 30 miles an hour all the way out here, it's just cutting it too close. We're not really scheduled to make it. Looks like we're going to be a couple miles short, even if we drove into 30 miles an hour all the way. So I stopped at an RV park to see if I can get a RV connection, a 220 connection, and nobody's checked out and everything's full. So I'm waiting for a spot to be able to charge enough to get to the Supercharger. I really shouldn't have tried to camp in the backcountry 30 miles away from the charger. But you don't push, you don't find your limits, I guess. So we'll see how this turns out, but I need to get to my COVID shot. I got to get there by 3. I'm concerned. So we were able to get a RV connection at the Marathon Motel and RV park. Actually, the owner, Danny, came out and checked in with me and hooked me up with a spot. And we've already charged for probably 30-40 minutes now, and we could probably go, but killing a little bit more time to not get in this situation again between here and Fort Stockton. So I think we need 59 miles, and we're already at 76 before this latest little dog walk here. So I think I've learned how far I can push it. So we're on the way to Fort Stockton from Marathon, and we started out with about 86 miles charged. When we pulled into Marathon, we had 64, so we got a good amount, and it was an hour and change. I don't think I've got it written down. I don't have it at the top of my head, but it's now looking like we're not going to get to Fort Stockton until 11. I've got to get to my COVID vaccine appointment before 3, and I still have to supercharge. So I think I still have time, but any more shenanigans, then I'm going to be in trouble. But I think I've seen the worst of it. I at least hope so.
Now turn left onto Interstate 10 West.
I got the vaccine. We made it there. We made it back. As you can see, I'm in a truck stop. The Fort Stockton Supercharger is in a Flying J truck stop, and I hope the drama is over for the rest of this trip. The most important thing, of course, was for me to get the COVID vaccine. Everything else is secondary as far as I'm concerned about this trip. And you know, I still got the logistics left of getting my campsite taken down and then getting down to Rio Grande Village to charge up to be able to come back. I'm definitely going to sleep down there tonight because there's just I just hit the limit of what was possible with the shenanigans today. It's just too much. With that camp, the Rio Grande Village being 30 miles away, it's just too much to try to do a backcountry campsite too. And fortunately or unfortunately, I tend to be a person that pushes the limits. And at least the good part of that is you find where the limits are and how to manage to them. But you know, the bad side is that there's sometimes anxiety and there's risk involved and all that jazz. So pushing the limits, you find how far you can go, and you can find out what's possible and what's impossible. And I certainly know much more about Tesla analytics and what I can and can't do. If I had to do it over again, I would likely do a reservation at the Marathon Motel in Marathon rather than down at the Rio Grande Village, because Marathon is at least on the way and the Rio Grande Village is a total 20 miles out of the way and 30 miles from the particular campsite I had, and probably even further from other campsites. So if I had to do it again, I might get it there, and then as long as you had enough charge, you really filled it up, maybe stay the night there before going into the park, and then you can go in, do your backcountry stuff and have enough charge to get back out to Marathon. And then it's just easy breezy to get from Marathon to Fort Stockton, and then you're back on the Supercharger network. So in the end, that's what, you know, live and learn. So now we got to finish supercharging. I'm going to fill it all the way up. Got to get to the campsite, take it down, and then go to Rio Grande Village. And then hopefully tomorrow is pretty straightforward. So in the end, I like a little adventure, and I certainly got that today. And having the vaccine is huge, but it's life-changing. Wow, what a difference a day makes. When you just use things the way they're intended to work, things work so much better. We camped in the car. This is the Rio Grande Village RV park, which, as you can see, not to make you sick, it's essentially a parking lot. I'm sorry I'm moving the camera so much. It's essentially a parking lot. We're right on the U.S. border. The Rio Grande River is on the other side of those trees over there. And there are RV connections, including a NEMA, to get technical, a NEMA 1450 RV connection, which is what the one of the adapters the Tesla has. And they also have 110 outlets in there too. But in there you can plug in your car and you get 20 some miles an hour to charge. This is what we came down here and charged for a few hours, but by staying the night, it made it a heck of a lot easier. We were able to sleep. It was climate controlled. I had a great night's sleep in the car. Chance seems to have as well, although he can't tell me that he did or not. And it just worked really well. I've made coffee this morning and got cleaned up. I had running water. So, you know, it was pretty much close to a simple RV experience than backcountry camping. But the car is charged up 320 miles, and so it'll be just a no-brainer to get to Fort Stockton. So, you know, there's only so much you can do when there's not a supercharger and you're 80 something miles from the nearest town and 130 miles from the nearest supercharger. It's just pretty extreme to try to do backcountry camping, driving around in the mountains and all of that far away from infrastructure. So I'm glad I tried it, and I'm glad it worked out, and I'll probably do it again, but I'll do it with more knowledge, and I'll have different plans, including maybe waiting for a campsite that's closer to here, or you know, getting a reservation in Marathon to have power on the way back, as opposed to 20 miles the far side from Fort Stockton. Those are some things that I'll consider for a future trip. So hopefully this has been helpful. It's certainly been a fun trip for me, even though it's only been a few days, and hope you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to click subscribe, and so long for now.